Good evening, Virgo. There are people who find this in a moment of quiet hope. Not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself, the quiet kind, the kind that exists in the early morning before the day starts demanding things. The kind that lives in the honest part of you that never quite stopped wanting what it wants. If that part of you is awake tonight, if something in you is leaning forward slightly, then maybe this arrived at exactly the right moment. There's something you've been wanting for a long time. Not recently, not since last year, for a long time. Long enough that you've stopped talking about it openly. Long enough that you've learned to hold it carefully privately in a way that doesn't expose how much it still matters. Because it still matters. That's the thing. Despite everything, despite the waiting and the wondering and the specific quiet grief of watching time pass without it arriving, it still matters. You haven't let it go. Not really. You've just gotten quieter about it. And the quietness, the way you've learned to carry this particular wanting without showing how heavy it is that came from somewhere, from the specific education that long waiting provides, from learning that hope, held too openly, has a cost. That wanting something visibly with your whole self, without the protective layer of managed expectations, leaves you exposed in a way that hurts a particular kind of hurt when things don't arrive on the timeline you needed them to. So you learn to want more quietly, more carefully, with one hand extended and one hand braced, just in case. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom of a sort, the kind that gets built from real experience, from actual disappointment, from the specific lesson of having hoped fully and been made to wait anyway. That protection made sense. It probably still makes sense in certain moments. But there's a question worth sitting with about what that protection has also been doing alongside keeping you safe from disappointment in the years of the waiting, because hope that's compressed to protect itself from pain is still hope. It doesn't disappear, it just goes quieter, more internal, more careful. And somewhere in that quietness, in the careful management of the wanting, something else can happen, something subtle. The distance you created between yourself and the hope can start to feel like distance between yourself and the possibility. Like the protection against disappointment became, over time, a protection against arrival. Like somewhere in the waiting, without choosing it, you started to believe just slightly that the thing you've been wanting might simply not be for you. That the waiting itself was a kind of answer, that people who receive what they've wished for are a different kind of person, somehow luckier, more aligned, more worthy in ways you couldn't quite identify but somehow assumed they must be. And that belief, quiet, foundational, rarely examined, is worth looking at directly, because it's the thing that sits between you and what's coming, not the circumstances, not the timing, not any external factor. That belief, the one that says this particular wish, the one you've been carrying the longest, might just not be in the cards for someone like you. But here's what's true about wishes that persist, about wants that survive everything that tries to extinguish them, about hopes that stay alive through years of waiting and managed disappointment and the specific grinding patience of someone who hasn't given up but has learned to hold the not giving up very quietly. They persist because they're real, because they belong to you in a way that isn't circumstantial or temporary or based on something you'll outgrow. They persist because They're connected to something fundamental about who you are and what your life is supposed to feel like. And things like that, real things, fundamental things, don't just fade because the timing hasn't been right yet. They wait, the same way you've been waiting, on the other side of whatever is still in the way. Now, here's the distinction that matters most right now. The difference between hoping and being ready. Hoping is something that happens to you. It rises and falls. It gets managed and compressed and protected. It exists in the background, persistent, quiet, sometimes inconvenient in how it refuses to disappear. Hoping is passive in a way. It's the wish continuing to exist despite everything that argues against it. Being ready is something different. Being ready is active, not in the frenetic, anxious, forcing it way, but in the internal way, the way of having made actual space for the thing to arrive. Having looked honestly at what might be blocking it, not externally, but internally, and having loosened the grip on those things, having decided somewhere private that you're willing to receive what you've been asking for, not just to want it from a safe distance, but to actually let it in. And there's a difference, a felt real, significant difference between those two states, between wanting something from behind the protective layer and being genuinely open to receiving it, between extending one hand and bracing with the other and simply standing there, open without the brace, willing to feel the full impact of something good arriving without immediately protecting yourself from it in case it doesn't last. That openness, that specific, vulnerable, courageous openness is what being ready actually feels like. And it's uncomfortable because it requires you to drop the protection that the long waiting built to stop managing the hope down to a size that's survivable if it disappoints again. To let yourself want fully, openly, without the armor, the thing you've been carrying quietly for so long. And maybe that's what this moment is asking of you. Not a dramatic gesture, not an announcement, just internally, in the quiet, a loosening, a slight release of the grip you've maintained on the carefully managed version of the hope, a willingness to let it be as large as it actually is, as real as it actually is, as close as it might actually be. Because here's what changes when you let yourself believe, not perform believing, not intellectually agree that things could work out, but actually bodily, genuinely believe that what you've been wishing for is on its way. What you notice changes. The things that were always there, the openings, the small opportunities, the moments that were pointing somewhere start to register differently. Not because the world changed, because you changed what you were available to see. Because when you're protected from your own hope, you're also protected from the signs of its approach. You've been so careful not to get your hopes up that you may have been missing the evidence that they should be. And what you project changes. The specific quality of someone who has stopped fighting their own wanting, who has decided to be fully, genuinely available to what they've been asking for, that quality is felt by other people, by situations, by the particular way life seems to respond when someone stops being at war with themselves about what they deserve. But here's the thing worth saying most carefully. The thing that might be the hardest to hear, the blessing, the one that's been building, the one that's closer than it's been, isn't just what arrives. It's also what the waiting built in you, what the long patience created, what the specific, difficult, unglamorous endurance of continuing to hold a wish through years of it not yet being answered did to the texture of who you are. Because you are not the same person you were when the wish first formed. You couldn't be. The waiting changed you. Not broke, you changed you. in ways that were sometimes painful and sometimes invisible and sometimes felt like nothing more than the passage of time through a life that wasn't moving fast enough. But the patience built something, the endurance built something, the specific depth that comes from wanting something real for a long time and not abandoning it, that built something in you that a person who received the thing easily, quickly, without the waiting, doesn't have a capacity, a quality, a kind of rootedness in the wanting. That means when the thing finally arrives and it arrives into someone who has been shaped by the longing for it, it lands differently, is held differently, is understood differently, is appreciated in a way that's only possible in someone who knows what the absence of it actually feels like. The waiting wasn't punishment. The waiting was preparation, not for the thing itself. The thing was always going to come eventually, but for the version of you that receives it, the version that's been built slowly in the years of the quiet carrying, the version that is more than you may be giving yourself credit for ready. So, what does getting ready actually look like right now, in this moment? Not in some dramatic future version of things, but here tonight in the honest and ordinary reality of where you are. It looks like this, like stopping just for a moment, the management of the hope, the careful compression of the wanting to, a size that feels safe, the protective layer between you and the full reality of what you've been wishing for, just releasing that slightly, not all at once, not in a way that requires you to be unguarded forever, just enough to feel clearly without the armor how much this matters, how long you've carried it, how real it is. And then in that honest, unarmored feeling, making a decision, not loudly, not as a declaration to anyone else, just privately, in the quiet, in the way that real decisions actually get made. The decision to stop being at war with your own hope, to stop treating the thing you want most as though wanting it this much is embarrassing or naive or evidence of something unrealistic about how you see yourself and your life. It isn't naive, it isn't unrealistic, it's honest. The most honest thing about you might be this, the wish that survived everything. The wanting that never quite let go, even when you got quieter about it. That persistence is information about what's real for you, about what belongs in your life, about what's been waiting on the other side of the protection, on the other side of the armor to finally be fully, openly, completely received. You've been waiting for it. And in its own way, in whatever way these things work, it has been waiting for you, for the version of you that the waiting built, for the you that exists now deeper, more patient, more genuinely ready than you were when the wish first formed, to stop protecting yourself from it long enough to let it land. That's the getting ready. That's all it is. Not a gesture, not a strategy, just opening slightly in the direction of what you've always wanted, in the direction of what has always, in some quiet and persistent way, been moving toward you. It's closer than the waiting has let you believe. It has been for a while. And the only thing left, the only real thing between you and it, is the decision to stop standing quite so braced against it, to let it find you the way you've always quietly, persistently, stubbornly been hoping it would. You're ready. More ready than the waiting taught you to believe. More ready than,